but the whole village could become amazing if it expanded out into the residential area or out into the airport boundaries. So will our RFP be open-ended enough to include side negotiations with private owners of other properties that aren't in our preview? So how do you open that up to say, we're willing to see a bigger picture idea of what you could bring to the table?
Well, in fact, one of the comments, I can't remember who made it, but they made exactly that point, that the RFP should encourage joint ventures. So, you know, obviously the Goodspeed comes to mind, or, I mean, they may be a proposer themselves, but, you know, how I see your point. I mean,
Yeah, the old ice cream
how do you
shop,
ask for that, you know, to
other
not only
private
focus on
properties.
that, on the 2.8 acres or
Does that
whatever?
open the question to properties that are currently good speeds that have been used as housing,
Could be.
or the old, carriage house?
So I know previously, we focused on what we owned
Right.
when we did this years and years and years ago. And we got goose egg back because basically it was enough room for a very small project. So I don't want that to happen again. So I think I'm throwing it out to the committee. How do we make this a heck of a lot more exciting
Right.
and more of an economic driver to the village so that we're a key player in the river valley?
I have to say that I think everybody that came to speak to us talked about the words critical mass. And you need enough property to make it a viable option for any contractor to come in to make any sort of hay with the actual project. And I think you're touching upon it right now. I completely agree that we need to make sure that the RFP doesn't pigeonhole us. We have 1.63 acres or something like that. We need to make sure that they understand that there can be negotiations, and hopefully there can be, with area property owners to obtain that critical mass to the extent that that contractor needs it.
And on top of that, like Will, with you representing, wearing dual hats of the Historic Commission, the River House, as it stands alone, can't be much.
No.
It needs a little house in really bad shape that needs to be gutted.
I remember when the siding came off, but
But the point I'm making is, the renditions we've seen in the past is to put a big giant patio around it to see the river, and all. Would the Historic Commission allow
the story, members of the commission, and we didn't speak to what it would look like, but on various times, at least our last meeting, not averse to doing that. Another concern that the members had was that there has to be, and the ideal spot for it is, even if the rest of the parcel is developed, that there should be public access right by the river.
As something?
As a edge park or whatever. But some place where people can come and take photographs of the bridge and the next ice jam, and, well, we didn't mention the next ice jam, but, so whatever happens with a developer that might be interested in developing that there would still be that easy public access right by the river itself. So that was one thing that came up.
So in light of that,
Yeah.
if I could, Mr. Chairman, do we want to seek from the Historic Commission, because we want to invite the different commissions to our commission, remember? And do we want to hear clearly what they're looking for before the RFP comes back? And then, I don't want them to be a party killer after all of a sudden we have all these great ideas and they say, well, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this. I'd rather know that up front prior to going to the commission, but I don't know if the commission's
Commission
comfortable
members.
doing that.
Well, we actually had scheduled a joint meeting that got canceled during the summer.
Right.
So we would have to sort of post it as a special meeting because it would be a joint meeting.
But whereas the River House is on the historic register,
Yes.
obviously the garage is not. I don't believe the town offices are on anything historic.
It's not architecturally significant, it's historically significant.
So, in light of
People-
those
people are
quick
making
discussions,
comments.
I think someone wanting to make a proposal to us needs to understand the restrictions they're under prior to making a proposal.
So I'm gonna stop us again, because I think we're getting a little bit off track. I just wanna make sure, we invested a lot of time in having a citizens forum, and I just wanna make sure we give that some due discussion, before we move on to other topics. So, and certainly, and we'll talk more about the commission and their role, and obviously their important voice. But the citizens that we invited have an important voice as well, and so, any other comments or observations?
I would just say that some of the overwhelming response that we got to was that we need to be very thoughtful in how the RFP is generated, sent out, and then reviewed. So they're relying upon this committee or a subcommittee of this committee to make that determination, because it is a very important decision in which we put forward to the first selectman to put forward to a referendum.
Right.
So I heard that several times, especially from, again, the younger people in the audience saying, you guys have a very big role to play in terms of that creation. And I know we're gonna talk about that, but that was a theme that I heard several times.
There was a person who asked about citizen participation in the development of the RFP. I don't know where we stand on that. It kind of seems to me that the individual who made that proposal could also have come tonight, but no.
Or maybe they couldn't.
They couldn't make it,
Right.
right. And I know at least two people that are out of town today and
Sure.
and did express disappointment.
Randy, you had a comment?
Yeah, I missed the meeting, unfortunately, I wanted to hear what people.
You had a very good reason to miss the meeting,
I
as a
did,
matter of fact.
But
Where are you
nonetheless,
going?
But Melanie did such a great job in the minutes that I was able to get some feeling for a lot of comments. And my observation from reading these comments was, it's a lot of them are very poor.
Yes.
It's all over the place, pro keeping it, owning it, leasing it, and all of that. A lot of the ideas were similar to what we've heard before. And I think what I get out of this is it allows us to open up the RFP pretty expansive, so that you get a lot of different ideas. And you don't have to be, if somebody said vision one.
Right.
So I think it's a good thing. Comments will help in putting together the RFP.
Great, thanks.
That's
Did you have anything, JT?
I mean, I've kind of been waiting until we get to the RFP to make some comments.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's where I feel.
Well, one of the comments was that we should have a clear vision as we go forward. And so I shared with you all the vision statement that this committee had developed, I guess I could say several years ago. And I don't know if anybody, I do have some extra copies of that. But I thought it should behoove us to talk about that and see how that looks and would it be helpful. Did folks have a chance to look at that? If you need a copy of it, okay.
Kind of living at work these days.
Anybody else?
Bill, I've looked over that, and I think that it is pretty much a lot of the things that we have talked about. But one of the things that I saw in was the access, and that they are saying, they needed that other access into the property, the northern access in. And I think that that is rather a critical thing to see, and I think that the RFP is going to have to address this too, as to are we going to be interested in access that is basically off of just Route 82 or Main Street right there, or are we going to be looking for something that is has the second access, which would
I
obviously
knew
be
you
a
would
lot
bring it off the con-
safer access to go into. There is actually a location there where you can meet the state guidelines for access to get in it. And it would seem like that would be something that I would like to see, is that we do have an access in here that meets state highway specifications for access into this property. We've all gone in and out of that driveway, and that driveway is one horrible place to get in and get out of. And I don't know whether that's the way in which we want to get into this property.
Right.
And I think that they were also talking about minimizing the parking in the village. Well, I think that the parking is absolutely critical. We've got to show how you can park. And it can't just be thinking we're gonna use the Goodspeed's parking lot. It's not gonna work. That's private property.
Right.
And I think that we have to show what are we gonna put on this property, and how are you gonna have parking to it? And so it's gotta be something that's convenient, or people aren't gonna come.
Yeah.
And I think that, the vision here is minimized. Well, I think it's a case where we should be making parking a priority, to say, how are we going to handle it? And I think that the RFP should ask the developer, with whatever they put on the property, how are they going to handle the parking?
The parking issue really resonated with me, especially after I went back and read the minutes and read the comments. And again, I know I've said this before, I don't mean to be a broken record, but I work in Hartford, I drive Capitol Ave every day, and there's a lot of development around the bush now. I mean, almost every day you see something different, and central to some of that stuff is parking. They're building a parking garage, and you can see how the pieces of the puzzle are fitting together. They're redoing the state office building, and then they're going to use the surface space for mixed use, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, it made me think of our project. And I thought, when we say, if in fact part of our vision is that it's a walkable village, which a lot of people feel that way, how do you do that? Where do you park so that you can walk, and things like that. And obviously, our project is a lot smaller, but it would be great to hear creative ideas as to how to address that. And maybe that ties into the joint ventures and the partnerships. I don't know.
So on that note, this committee needs to decide, do we put a list of all the private property owners that developers could try to make deals with? Because Gary Bogan is a key player in this, with his property being one of the key accesses as an alternate route to the village. Broom Street being an alternate route to the village. Mary Ellen Klink's property being a key property to connect walkways. Goodspeed being a key partner in the negotiations with their commercial properties. So do we kind of create a laundry list of all the players and let the developers come back to us? What we started at the river with the dock is key, because that dock could expand all the way down the river, and there are hundreds of thousands of boats that go by our village every day wanting to have pizza and burgers, and if there's a microbrewery, I mean, it could be a mega destination from each end of the river to come to East Haddam, to park and have a fun afternoon.
Right.
So all these things tie in, but do we want to direct it, or do we want to create a laundry list of, these are all your assets, come back to us with a proposal?
My own opinion on that is, I don't think we need to give the developers a list of the property owners. I think they will be able to figure that out all by themselves.
There's that many of them.
I think they're pretty smart people here.
I want to hone in on that too, because if you have to tell a developer that, there's not much of a developer.
Right.
And I think that this is, I think goes back to what we've talked about too. It's having a master plan of the village. And so that if a developer comes back and says, okay, this is where I see A, B, and C being, it's gonna make it a lot clearer for us that, yes, they have taken parking into consideration. They have taken access into
Do we
consideration.
list that as part of the things we wanna see? Because here's an example, Levita. They have a partnership with the town, their trash, their dumpster is shared with the town. Now the town's gone, the dumpster's still there, but if someone buys a property and says, Levita, your dumpster's gotta be in your front of your building, well, that's a huge problem. So do we want that addressed in the RFP? I mean, do we get down to that minute definition?
I don't think you need to get into that. I mean, we're looking for the broad thing here. What do they wanna do with it? What's going to be the biggest asset to the community?
But
Not
that's
where
a
somebody's
huge-
private dumpster is going to go, or their,
But think how critical that is to Levita.
but it isn't critical to the big picture as to what we're trying to develop here.
Well, it's critical to one of your few restaurants in the village that has survived based on a partnership with the town.
True.
So I don't think that can be ignored in the RP, that we're just gonna hope.
Or perhaps some language that talks about,
Yeah.
making accommodations for existing
Right.
arrangements.
And I know now we're getting the RP, which is.
Well, I'd
Just
like
said
to, I'd like to draw us back to the vision, but I think, to your points, and in my personal opinion, you know, we should have some guideposts. I mean, I agree that, you know, we wanna see what's out there, and, you know, maybe there are some things that we can keep open, lease, buy, you know, all that stuff. But shouldn't we, as, you know, stewards of the town, and, you know, we've been charged with, I think, I don't know, the ordinance doesn't say vision explicitly, but, I mean, you know, I think to articulate what are some of the things that we wanna see. You know, we wanna see,
I'd
we
put
wanna
that-
see walkability, we wanna maybe
Parking,
a
walkability.
holistic approach, you know, we'd have to wordsmith it, but, you know, with the rest of the village.
Destination,
A destination,
aspect, the
right,
village.
and,
Any- Chester is in our eyesight, we wanna be better than Chester.
because that kinda, yeah.
Chester-
We wanna be,
I want that as.
designated the crown
Yeah,
jewel
I'm
of
putting it in.
Connecticut, not just East Haddam, right?
They just have a stream, good God, it's a little crummy stream going through Chester. An entire river.
But what they don't have is Route 82 going through the middle.
Correct. You can actually cross
That's
Chester.
our big challenge, is everybody can deal with Route 82, to make
Yep.
the village walkable, crossable,
Yep,
and have the feeling like Chester, and that's gonna be tough. And it's gonna take somebody with some very good vision to figure
Right.
that out.
But that's what we're putting out for requests
Right.
for people that do this for a living, that have, you know.
I mean, Chester, I think one of the things they do, which really impresses me, the first Friday of every month, they have an open house. All the businesses in town open up, they close their main street, that one, call it that, and people walk around, crowds, you can't find parking spaces.
Yeah.
It is extremely popular.
It's
and
hard
there's
to.
salted baguette bread.
So,
Unbelievable.
Yes.
but they've made accommodations for parking in that town. Now, in the last, when
Well,
we,
if I could just say one thing
Please.
on this, it looks like we're headed towards coming up with, asking whoever bring back information on this RFP, to come up with a plan for the village. Is this what we're looking for? I mean, do we want a plan for the village?
Why wouldn't we?
Yes.
Oh, I mean,
Yes.
I've thought we needed a master plan of the village forever. And, because how else do we judge?
But this committee isn't, I don't think, gonna make a master plan.
No, I don't, no, but let the developer
agree.
come back and answer all those questions that have just been going around this table.
That's what we
Where are you
want.
gonna
Yeah.
park? Where are you gonna, how are you gonna have pedestrian, traffic around
Yes.
here?
It may just be helpful to set it up as, the RFP includes these, we would expect these, questions to be answered. And we can just make a list of certain things like, you know, joint, parking accommodations for multiple businesses. Cause even the Goodspeed or whatever may wanna share some of it, even though they have a parking lot, but Levita absolutely needs it. Pelletier's building, he's got a small parking lot, but if, depending on what he puts in there, if he puts anything in there, it's not big enough, he needs to share parking. Bogan's place with the sweet shop, I mean, it could flourish in some respect if there was some parking behind it, cause what does he have on the street? Almost nothing,
Right.
maybe 3 spots. But just do it in a way that doesn't force people to, we don't wanna tell them how to do it, We just wanna tell them these issues must be
Right.
addressed.
Public access, right?
And just make it in a list of things,
Huge.
public access and all the rest, these things could be applied.
With regard to public access, it's in here and was mentioned,
That was very important to our, right, our
but
vision.
public access would be like a place for the public to be able to go to the bathroom. But it's in our original.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if we said the bathroom, but yeah.
We did say, no, we
Public
did say
bathroom.
public bathroom.
Yes,
Did we? Oh,
down at the new boat launch, there is that.
When we did
Porta
the,
potty.
when we did,
There's still bathroom access.
when we did the RF,
I'm not talking about a porta.
when we did the yeah, let me finish. When we did the RFP last time, which obviously didn't amount to anything, but we did incorporate a whole section that, you know, took elements of this letter to articulate, you know, okay, we're not saying this is exactly what we want, but I mean, here's the big picture, you know.
Here's the issues
Yeah.
that we're dealing with in
Yes.
that village.
Yeah.
How are you gonna overcome them?
Kind of
And that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And,
Hopefully there's some people out there that, you know.
we're looking for some smart people
Yeah,
with
we're
some great
smarter than
ideas.
us.
That's what we're looking for, with money, with
So,
money.
so how would we, as we transition to the next topic, which is actually the RFP, you know, how do we get that? I mean, is this letter sufficient to use? Do we articulate another vision statement or a list of those items?
Joe, I have a question. You've got draft RFP, then you have the Connecticut Main Street Center. Was that the group that came there?
Yes.
I'm wondering if, I have the cart before the horse here. Might it be better to invite, get a list of all the developers, invite them here before we send out the RFP so we see what's here first? Then we can come back with ideas?
Well, I don't really want to jump too far ahead, but I think we have some things to announce about the Connecticut Main Street Center, and I think it's important that we talk about that and how we could potentially use them.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that they could advise us on a lot of things, the development of the RFP, how we solicit proposals. I think they could be an important partner.
I just recall from when they were here, the one thing that really I took attention to was the fact that they have these lists of developers, and they have this idea of bringing them, having a day where they come
Right.
to the area, they look
Look
at,
at term for that.
yeah, there was a term, I can't remember what it is, kind of like a visitation. or
Yeah,
something.
Yeah.
right.
And I thought that was a great idea.
Yeah.
And that was the one thing that they presented to us that I thought
Yeah.
was worth paying.
Well, let me propose this. Could I get some volunteers, or a volunteer, or maybe a few volunteers to develop a vision statement for this committee to review? Is that
Bullet points. I think that tweaking this might help. I do think there's some things in here that, European piazza style, I know at least one commission member has been quite emphatic about not happy with that idea. Not me, but I think the farmer's market ideas be out of the.
You were on that committee at the
Yeah, I
time.
know, I remember that. But I wasn't my commission member, but, I'm relooking at things like stone, cobblestone. I think that would be a problem with regard to just basic maintenance. And I recognize the importance of dealing with, having not too many impervious surfaces, but I've also had the chance, just from where I live, to see the dilemma that someone who took the time, energy, effort, and money to put a cobblestone driveway in, and all the problems that has created for them, and sometimes for the town, as there's water runoff in the winter, and that sort of thing, and the heaving of the cobblestones.
Gotcha. Well,
I know that's a.
what do you think? Maybe we'll table that item for the moment and see.
Well, I think it's worth. I think we need to have something that says what our role is from like today
Mm,
to when we hand over the keys or whatever,
right.
like what, and I think we need to make clear like what the process for the developers will be, like when it goes to a vote, like what is that vote gonna look like? Are they gonna vote on one developer versus another? Or are they voting on certain aspects of a developer's plan? Like I think there's just, this might be jumping ahead a little bit, but I think as like the town, we need to, and as a group, to be more ready to kind of push this through once it gets to that point. Cause I just don't see like it is gonna be a town, like the town is gonna vote on something, but I just can't really picture without us setting like a clear guideline or like having a structure to properly grade like each developer's proposal in a fair.
Yeah,
like, in a
I don't
fair-
think we're gonna be asking them for more than maybe 2 choices. I mean, you can't go out there and ask the public to start
Right.
voting on 5 different
No,
possibilities.
we'd have to make a recommendation
Yeah.
to our selectmen.
Right.
They're
We
gonna
gotta
make a
narrow it
recommendation
down,
to
that's what
town,
our
yes or
job
no.
will be, narrow it
Yeah, I think
down.
it's one option,
It's
right?
not,
Yeah.
it's one option.
One.
Board of Selectmen will bring one option.
Just
for a
like this
town vote.
building that we're sitting in, right?
One option, right.
And one option failed, if I recall, and then one option prevailed, and we're sitting in the option that prevailed, so I think it's only gonna be one, but to your point, though, I think you're right, I think we need to direct them to say, this is what the process looks like going forward, are you in?
Right.
Because this is a process, this isn't gonna happen in a couple of months.
Right.
But
And I-
developers that deal with towns and town development.
Yeah,
They must
they
know
get it.
this. I mean, right.
they
I
get
mean,
it,
Yeah.
yeah, but
Right.
to,
You know what I mean?
with all fairness, though, some of the folks that have approached us already, I get the sense that even though they're well intended, expect this to happen overnight. So to JT's point, I think we really need to give them a guideline of what the process is going to look like going forward.
And then also to be fair to the developers,
Absolutely.
that, you know, like just as us or the first selectman choosing one
No.
thing to go to a vote, you know,
Right.
that's not really fair to a developer. So I
Right.
think there needs to be a concrete way to prove that this proposal is better than that proposal. And my thought and how it is in business is like a scorecard, like you
Yeah.
have a rigid scorecard that we as a committee vote on, and that is how we grade, you know, the project.
Right,
And so that each developer has a fair chance, you know, it's not just, well, I'm young, I like a brewery, that's not fair too. A
Right.
developer, you know,
Yeah.
there's a rubric or whatever
Right.
to
Yes.
evaluate
Right.
each proposal.
and there kind of
Score
is
it.
one in the RFP I saw, but it's
Yes.
not substantial
Right.
to be a fair.
I think we would have revised it, frankly, if we would have gotten a proposal.
Right,
We would have had
right.
to come to some sort of
Yeah.
conclusion about what to put forward, but.
So are you saying that, are you tying this back to the vision piece or?
So,
or-
yeah, a little bit of both, I guess,
Yeah.
I think,
I mean, it's okay if you're not, I just. I just-
yeah, like I think that we need to be clear, as a group, we need to be clear, like what, are like is the critical path to get this done.
Yeah,
And what our role in that is, and then, like I think we brought as much information to the table, I think as we can for the most part. So I don't think we need to be, a voice of information anymore. So I think that should be put past in the vision statement. Now this is our new vision. So
I say we have to
Of
get
some
something on
sort,
the
yeah.
street soon. I
yeah,
don't
Yeah.
think we need to take 4 more meetings to come up with this. These are the things that are important to us. Come back with some proposals and we'll grade and make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen and then. But actually, the Board of Selectmen would put the actual RFP on the street. So we would make a recommendation of an RFP, the Board of Selectmen would launch it. And then we would help evaluate it, make a recommendation again back to the Board of Selectmen, and the Board of Selectmen would bring it to the town.
I believe from comments last month, that one thing we would have to take to the voters, if there was the decision to put the property up for sale, then that should go to referendum. I think a number of people brought that up last time. Not in the same direction, the other thing I think of is, the village is
The whole package.
designated as a village district as well as a historic district. And so there are state statutes and town regs that apply. For instance, there's a lot of facets to that would look at design review for structures and that sort of thing. And we should at least glance at that and see if there's anything in the village district regs that and the statutes that we would have to sort of take into account, so a developer, a potential developer would be aware that that's something that we have to look at too.
So,
If I could just say, I think the vision statement is close enough still, 8 years later, to what we've heard from the audience at the last forum and what our committee members still agree on to a substantial extent, probably 90%, that I think I agree with Mr. Walter that right now our focus should really be about creating a subcommittee to move very quickly in reviewing what goes out in terms of an RFP. I think Mr. Smith offered to sit on such a committee. I think if you don't mind, Mr. Brady, for me to volunteer you, but I think that you bring a different perspective because you sit on the Historical Commission and you bring their thoughts to the committee. I think we need that. We need that synergy, we need that consensus right now, and it needs to move quickly because we have interest now and now is the time to move forward. But I think in terms of creating a further vision, we've done a lot of work on that, and I think it's close enough, so.
okay. Everybody?
I would totally agree with that. I think that Mr. Walter's comment, we should get this thing put together and get it out on the street, and let's see how many developers we have. I hope that we have enough so that this is gonna be a real difficult to choose which one we want.
That's a perfect segue, and I don't want to usurp the chair's authority, but into the Connecticut Main Street Center.
Well, I'd like to make a few comments about the
Sure,
RFP.
yeah.
So, unfortunately, Jim Ventris is not here. I did have a chance to speak with him, and I distributed the RFP that he put together. He modeled it off of an RFP from the town of Groton. But he added a lot of content. I don't know for those of you who've had a chance to review it. I thought it was very, very good. And I mean, not that I'm qualified probably to make that determination, but I liked a lot of the historical references.
He's really good at pulling together stuff from
Yeah,
all over.
Yeah.
it's really good.
I don't know if it's final, but, and I think, and correct me wrong, Mr. Lyman, I think that we've been tasked with, reviewing the RFP and maybe making any recommendations. So we can have a little bit of discussion right now about it, or, I was thinking it might be appropriate to have a little small working group to, really look at it carefully, maybe make any recommendations. They might be small ones, adding the minutes from last meeting, or adding the vision statement, or making some reference to some of the key points that, are important to us, like walkability and traffic and access to the property, public access to the property.
I'm not averse to being on that subcommittee, I'm just trying to figure out my time and scheduling.
Yeah, it's going to be quick. I imagine it to be quick. Within the next couple of weeks, the subcommittee meets, and then they maybe even meet with Mr. Ventris, for example, and then they incorporate different things that maybe he didn't. I think it's a very quick process and doesn't require a lot of time, but I think based on the citizen comments at the forum, that it's important enough for us to put a very strong emphasis to make sure that this committee is doing its due diligence and making sure that their comments are heard. So, not saying that Mr. Ventris hasn't done that, because I think he really has captured it well, but I just think that as a committee, we have the obligation to make sure that that is captured.
I'd be happy to work with JT
Okay,
and Will.
excellent.
Okay.
So between, before the next meeting, you could have, some recommendations back to us, would that be reasonable? Okay, great. And Emmett touched on this in his remarks, but Jim had mentioned this grant, and he thought the timing, the remediation grant, the brownfield grant rather, and that would really strengthen, I mean, he thought if we had that grant and we would reference that in our proposal, it would really strengthen,
Or put it in the proposal, it's pending, and then as we go forward.
What's the time frame on that, Mr. Lyman? Did you mention, what's the timeline on that?
I think submissions in the next few days,
Okay,
and December, they're gonna have some results on it.
okay,
Could be very.
Great.
This is for
drag on, yeah.
cleaning up underneath the, yeah.
Well, if I could make one comment on that, I think it's dangerous putting that in the RFP.
what's that?
I think it's dangerous putting that in the RFP about something that's a potential grant or something out there like that. I would much rather have the RFP say, this is what it is, this is what you're bidding on. You throw something like that in there, all of a sudden now it's become an issue.
Right.
And I don't think that belongs in there.
So to comment on that, so I think the town needs to make a stance on, is the town cleaning up the site or not?
Exactly.
So,
And I think by putting that in there, saying that there is something out there, we don't know whether we're gonna get it or we're not gonna get it. So why are you putting that in there? This is a bidding thing, that somebody's gonna put a bid together here. And I think throwing that out there, now all of a sudden if I was bidding on this, I would think, oh, then that's going to be there. And so, and if it doesn't show up, I'm gonna be looking for the town to do it. And I wouldn't put that in there. That was my own opinion on that
You're
one.
saying it would offset the town's expenses to provide a clean property.
Yeah,
So if we
but
win the grant, it's great, we don't,
I wouldn't put it in there and make it part of the RFP. That would be my
Do you
own.
think that'll turn off certain contractors from bidding on the proposal? By us, like not putting it in there and just saying you take it as you find it and them saying, oh, I really don't wanna
No,
invest
I think-
$875,000 in cleaning up the property?
It looks the other way. I'm looking at it as a liability. That,
I think that if developers saw that, they might say, what kind of time am I on
Yeah,
top
that
of?
would be my.
it's time frame that'll
The
pay.
time.
Are you guys gonna screw around with this brownfield for 2 years? Cause I
When
don't
you
have
see
2 years.
grant written anywhere, you go, oh,
Great.
no, I hope it's in my lifetime, because these things drag on forever.
So you don't feel, based on your experience in your trade, that it'll turn off people if we don't put like, we're trying to get money for this? You
No,
think that
I'd say-
they take it as they find it, right?
turn it around the other way. If we do get money, then we'll clean up the site. But if we don't get any money, I wouldn't want to put it in the RFP, because then that gives me the indication that you're going to do something. And I don't see
Right.
anything where this is a winner for the town.
Right.
I see it as a liability for the town.
I understand. I just want to make sure that if we don't put in the fact that we've applied for a grant, that we're not going to turn people away just because of that expensive.
But we don't know. if
Well,
we get it.
let me ask a question.
It's still up
Is
in
this
the air.
RFP, before it goes out on the street, is it gonna have to be reviewed by your attorneys?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you know what, it may be a moot point. I mean, I know there's a lot of haste, we wanna
Yeah.
get this out, and I totally agree with that, but, December is not that far away.
So I think, to be fair to the developers though, I think it needs to be known that,
What
and
we
it
know.
is what we know.
What we know.
And then I think the town we need to have a stance on that. To be fair to the developers, like, it's not, our stance can't be, if we get the grant, we're gonna clean it up. If we don't get, that could be your stance, if we get the grant, we're gonna clean it
Or
up,
if
if we
stance
don't.
could be, we maintain ownership of the property.
Right.
And you
Right.
don't have, we have all the risk.
Has there been any discussion in EDC or the Board of Selectmen about what our position is on that yet? No. Okay.
Basically, you wanna hold the developer harmless, because
Yeah.
same reason that gas station is still sitting there, that Bruce Dutch wanted to buy, is because Cumberland Farm would not maintain responsibility for the gas bill.
Right.
So it sits there rotting.
Yeah.
And I think as a town, from a developer's perspective, cleaning up a site is a huge
That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah,
Is like, is it
gonna
a
be
deterrent?
There's no doubt about it.
The
So
town has to own
to
it.
put the grant that's a possibility, and if we don't get it, is a liability. To not put it in is a deterrent. As far, so it's like a catch-22.
Nobody wants to bid if it's a maybe. I've got to drop another,
Yeah, that's true.
250,000 on cleanup, but I'm not sure. I mean, that's just a giant.
So I'm not proposing this, but do we wait until we know what the town's position and how much it's actually gonna cost before we send out the
So you
RFP.
wanna push
And if the grant's gonna be,
results.
I'm not proposing that, I'm just saying, is that something we wanna wait for?
We can't speak for the town as to what the town will vote to do.
No, I'm not saying that. Do we wanna wait to send out the RFP until December when we're supposed to get a response? No.
I think as quick as we can get it out, we want to get it out.
Okay, so this working group's gonna have to decide what,
Where we wanna recommend.
where we
to the
wanna
selectmen
recommend.
As to how we handle it.
Exactly,
So that's not something we're gonna whip up into.
exactly, agreed.
Maybe it's beating the dead horse at this point, but, if I'm the developer and looking at the property, if I see there's a grant for basically pollution remediation, I'm gonna like walk away from the idea. Because I might feel I'm gonna be stuck with, a problem that, I think we'd be better off to say, we're giving you a 25 to 50-year-old, lease on the land to, holding harmless for anything that is found in the process. Because then we're obliged to clean it up and the developers.
Right,
Well, that's just, the only thing is, that's pigeonholing a little bit, because you're going to, there's people who wanna buy. There will be
Yeah,
people that
I
would
know.
rather own. They don't wanna deal with the town, because as you can see, we can't even decide on the simplest thing. But, it's just the way it is, I mean, you know, so
Dumpster stuff. Oh, Lord.
Maybe you wanna hear from one of the developers.
So Randy, Will, JT, thank you very much, and I'm sure Mr. Ventris will gladly work with you guys.
And then we could
So the-
set that date after we break up today.
So, you recall, several months ago, Patrick McMahon from the Connecticut Main Street Center came in, and, so I've had a few email exchanges with him, and, just wanted to revisit the issue, and actually subsequently found out that, I think where we left it last time is that First Selectman was gonna talk to some neighboring towns to see what their experience was. So do you wanna share that with us, or?
I talked to Haddam, they thought it was well worth the investment.
Yeah,
I can't remember exactly what it was, but you get your money back essentially,
500, yeah.
$500 immediately. You don't have a budget, but we do have money for it.
Okay,
And we have approved this in Board of Selectmen.
excellent,
that's great,
So
Excellent.
All you have to do is decide to go forward with it.
that's great. I make a motion to go forward with the Connecticut Main Street Center.
great.
Second?
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Great. I think that's great news. I think that'll help us. You know, I like I said, exchanged some emails with Patrick. I think one thing is, you know, when the RFP is ready to go out, they can be a tremendous help to send it out. I mean, he's got a vast network of people that would be interested in this.
they also have, what Randy was talking about, is they always propose that whole concept of bringing prospective developers together to look over the site
Yes.
before the RFP goes out.
Exactly.
I think it's a good idea. I would love to see that. If they could come up with a half a dozen developers that we have never heard of.
Yes.
I think it's,
Sounds like.
And
Worth the
what
effort.
better way to present it to the town that's
I mean,
to say that
talk
we
about
put this
getting
out to a
$500
broad spectrum of interested people.
I think they would also be willing to look at the RFP if we wanted them to, for their thoughts and comments. They have a lot of experience with that, for similar types of projects, for municipalities. So I think it should be a good investment for us. So I'll work with you,
That's great.
sir, to make that happen. So, all right, any other issues for the committee that we want to talk about? That, man.
Okay, we're quiet.
working.
Audience, do you want to do an audience?
Oh, yeah, no, we
It's
do
not on the
that.
agenda,
Yeah.
but
are we gonna get the copies of, Will, copies of what your commission,
Yeah,
yeah.
Oh, I didn't put audience.
Things that people
We
talk,
won the,
Yeah.
and
I'd like to see that.
I just haven't had a chance to type it out. I'll send it to you.
Yeah, I'd like to see it.
So I'll open it up to the audience as well. Any comments from the audience? And if you do, if you could just state your name for the record, please.
Yeah, Jeff Riley and my wife Mary Wilson. And I'm actually one of the interested developers that have got to work together and Couple of just rough comments. On the remediation, I'm an architect, founded a firm named Centerbrook Architects in Centerbrook County, River. 75, and we do a lot of this kind of work all over the country. And I can't recall a project where a developer has been interested in a piece of land that has an open-ended remediation problem. To walk away from it.
I'm sorry, I
The
just.
town owns it, it's the town's problem, and they own it, and they should solve it.
That's what you're
Just
saying.
an opinion.
That's what we're saying.
And let's see, you refer to it as a RFP, and I think, Bob, you mentioned that you're expecting an actual bid for the purchase of the land, or if it's a lease of some kind. And that's probably possible, but you have to remember that the purchase price of the land is going to factor in to the whole financial pro forma for the whole project. And you're not going to, no developer is going to be able to develop that in the span of 2 months or 3 months even. It's a pretty involved, expensive undertaking. And so I always have thought of this as less of an RFP and more of an RFQ of practical qualifications, where the developer is presenting his experience, his talents, his team, his consultants, his market research, the whole package. Here's what I'm bringing to this thing. I'm going to do a town plan. I'm not going to do it, whatever it is. And here's my price kind of parameters for the purchase of the land. And then based on those qualifications, you pick the preferred developer. And then you give that person 6 months or whatever it is to develop a full financial plan, pro forma. Because your primary concern will be reality. You're going to want to be assured that this thing is a financially viable undertaking, and that the team that's doing it is financially capable of doing it. And that just takes a lot of time. So that's just a thought. I don't want to get involved in it, but I've always thought of it much more of a request for qualifications than an actual.
That's the way we did it last time.
Okay. And then certainly the private-public partnering will be an essential part. It is an essential part of any one of these types of development. But I would leave that definition of that up to the developer. And whether it's dumpsters or street lamps or sidewalks or whatever, that should be part of, let the developer make an offer to the town of how to develop that kind of private public partnership. And then last, and probably the most important piece for a developer to hear, that once the developer is selected, and once the plan is developed, and once the plan has been presented to the town and approved and voted on, and everything is a go, that developer is going to want to make sure that this committee is the group he works with from then on. And he doesn't have to go back to town referendums and P and Z time and time again, every time some little change happens in the plan. And I don't know if that's what she's got going, but I hope you empowering yourselves as the governing agency within the town to oversee the implementation of the plan. Because the implementation is going to take years. It's going to take, and it's going to go through a lot of, believe me, a lot of tugs and pulls and pushes and shoves and if it has to go through the town process each time something new happens,
Yes,
it'll be a mess.
agreed.
Have you seen this, where basically a committee of the town operates that way?
It's usually done
It's
Yeah.
usually,
Yeah.
okay.
It's usually.
Board of Selectmen will have to change the charge to
Yeah.
give us
Yeah.
that.
I was gonna say, we're not,
That, our charge doesn't go that far, but
yeah,
But we could ask for.
becoming a building committee.
Yeah, that's what you're becoming a building committee.
Right, like the middle
And it's
school.
Well, it's usually a revitalization, it could be a building committee, but it's usually a town revitalization committee that is given the responsibility for making sure it all happens right, you know, the way it was, the way the people voted.
Yep.
So those are just some of my. But, Mary and I are extremely interested, and the people I have, my investors are extremely interested, and we're pretty excited.
great.
We're already working on it. And that said, another reason why the proposal should be really a vision proposal by the developer is that it does merit the input and the involvement of the town. So you don't want a fait accompli, here's what I'm gonna do, if you don't like it, then it needs to be, here's my vision of what I wanna do, and now let's involve people in that
Right.
process.
Just,
That sounds good.
we do have a precedent in how we've dealt with a complicated process when Goodspeed Up Foundation built the Actors Housing, both on Creamery Road and along 82, where the Historic District Commission was the first line of entry, was looking at design proposals and how it's all gonna work out. And then it went to recommendation with the planning and zoning. One facet of this that the Historic District Commission has a luxury that other commissions don't have is that if there's a developer interested in it, the commission isn't required to open up the door as a public hearing and have it all done and over with in 65 days, but can work through all the kinks, or a lot of the kinks, before it ends up going towards planning and zoning and saying, yep, we give the go-ahead to this, and then take it up the next process. So already P and Z has the blessing of the Historic District Commission, and that we've looked at it, it seems a comprehensive proposal, and we go forward with that.
That's exactly, I wasn't suggesting that you forego the
No, I-
first
I'm-
round of P
no, I'm
and Z
just-
and all that, that has to happen, but once you're underway,
Right.
I don't wanna have to come back to the P and Z every time I wanna change a cupola to you guys should be.
Well, and the other part of that is if there's something that the developer, and this is, the commission has done before, if there's something where the developer isn't really certain about what I'm gonna do with, if there's gonna be cupola, or what kind of lighting, or the foundation of the building and how it's gonna be clad, you know, then we just put some stipulations and say, you know, okay, we're accepting the overall idea, and then come back when you're certain about what you wanna do with these things.
Yeah.
So, I think
And
that's a
it's
key.
not not wanting to deal with the agencies.
Right.
That's not the issue. The issue
No,
is
it's going back and forth.
going back
I
to
know, right.
referendum, that
Right.
would be a killer.
No,
Yeah.
I agree with you.
thank you, Mr. Rowley. Any other comments from the audience? Great.
Oh, can I just make it, so I think Mr. Riley brings up a good point about the RFQ versus the RFP. And I think that's what maybe Will, Randy, and I have to kind
Give
of work out,
consideration.
because an RFQ and an RFP, I mean, are extremely, different, so.
Yep,
I guess.
and I think this is based off an RFP.
Yeah, and how I read it, I think it reads as an RFQ though. Because an RFP
Yeah.
is kind of like, on the developer's end, you kind of got to spend some money to
Right.
go into an RFP, so I don't know who makes the decision of, I think, in my opinion, the right process is an RFQ, and then there's a short list, and then it goes to an RFP.
To an RFP.
RFP, so I don't know.
Yep. And if it's okay with you guys, and I think it's already out there, but we can, I can send you the RFQ that we developed last time.
Okay.
There may be language in there
Yeah.
that could be helpful.
Okay,
And it's even done where the committee gets a number of RFQ, responses to their qualifications. And then you select what's called the preferred developer.
Right.
And then you give that preferred developer, based on all those qualifications, a chance to come back to you with, here's my whole financial plan. Here's the,
Yep.
here's the financing, here's the investment, here's the taxes I'm gonna be generating, here's the town
Right.
gown, the town, public, private.
Right.
The investment I'm looking for. It's a pretty comprehensive plan, which you're gonna wanna have.
Right.
Takes time.
And this is where I think the Connecticut Main Street might be able to advise us as well.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, they will.
All right, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So move.
All right, all in favor? Great, thank you.
Bill, do you have another one of those?
Yes, I do.
I think you might be right, it should be an RFQ for
yeah.
just to get that initial group of people that we're interested in.
Have been sounding
I know it, don't we have, don't we?
More than one.
Yes, yes, I'm open.
Really, in a sense,
There you go.
ready.
no, not RFPs.
And if I'm not wrong,
You got a $quarter, $1, or no? Buy me a coffee next time?
I'll buy you a coffee.
Where-
As long as it's only a quarter.
As long as it's a quarter, I'll buy you a coffee. I'm good.
Yeah, that's one of the.
Yeah, and anybody is gonna turn their nose into something that's kind of big environmental.
Well, you know, they said, town's taken care of.
Ken, right? And I think we, mutual
say
a
that.
grant,
but we
talking
don't
about
know.
Sunday with Stanley Pack. Stanley Pack.
Oh, yeah.
They think he might have gone to school with him. He grew up in town.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's kinda like, we don't have a whole lot of choice.
Yeah, I worked with him at Public Health. He's retired now, but, and I saw him at a party.
Yeah.
No,
Do something.
I'm not retired yet.
Had a number of
Lawyer?
different positions. No, not a lawyer either.
Detective?
I started off as an